Hello again. Please be seated. You know the drill. So we just heard by Bram Desmet, what his vision is about the integration of supply chain planning, IBP, S&OP, and financial planning. But now we will listen to 3 short pitches from very experienced supply chain planning professionals. So first we will hear Edith van Erp from Mars, and afterwards we hear Annika Goudswaard from Adama, and Ariane from Henkel will wrap it up, and then we have a conversation on stage managed by Bram. So we have short pitches of 3 experts telling what they are doing right now and have been doing on S&OP. And then we have a conversation, and then you have a conversation among yourself. So Edith, the floor is yours. Please give your power pitch.
Thank you, Martijn. So my name is Edith van Erp-Slot. I'm here from the Netherlands, and I joined Mars in the previous century. I have a background in supply chain, but actually what really my passion is learning, developing, and curiosity. And I love to connect the dots. So those kind of capabilities has led me to roles varying up from sales, account management, sales management, supply chain, S&OP Plus, up to manufacturing, leading the operations in the Henkel factory, our chocolate factory there. This whole raft of experiences then brought me to regional roles, leading big transformational projects for the region, where this ability to really connect the dots and do enterprise projects was really a benefit that I could bring. And of course, for myself, that was a great opportunity to keep learning. So today I want to tell you something about one of the transformational projects that we've done recently, or actually we're still in the middle of it, which is enterprise planning. And I was just looking at the slide where Martijn introduced me, and it said supply chain planning, which actually is a miss because it's enterprise planning. And I think that's maybe the first clue already of what I would like to share with you guys today. So before going into the content of what we did and what we still have ahead of us, maybe just a glimpse of what is Mars about. Mars is a big business, as I think many of you know. We have over 115,000 associates working across the world, not only in chocolate, so confectionery, the area that I work in, but also in pet nutrition, pet care. We have a big division of health clinics for animals, but also food production is a pillar in our business. To narrow it down to the organization that I work for, as said, I work for the confectionery business and I work in Europe. So I lead the demand planning teams in Europe, Central East Asia, Belarus, and Turkey. And I work in this full supply chain area. And my team is responsible for the planning of 6 billion of business. So what have we done over the last 3.5 years, basically? So we have implemented enterprise planning, and I led the development stage of that project. So from the day that one of the VPs came to me and said, okay, we need to do enterprise planning and we need to do something different, go and go after it and find out what we need to do, up until the moment where we said, yes, you have the approval now and we are going to deploy. At that point in time, I moved into the operational organization in the role that I am now. So to give a bit of a flavor of what this enterprise planning project was about, we came from the realization that we needed to become more intelligent, we needed to be integrated, and we needed to be more agile. And then from that, we started to build a full target operating model for the business. And from that target operating model, we moved into what is the organizational structure that fits with that. And from there, we moved into, and then what are the systems that we need to implement with that. I think a couple of the key features that we have implemented is that we have an end-to-end integrated planning organization now. That means that all the demand planning teams in the markets report directly into me. I report into the regional supply chain, and the people that report into me have a dotted reporting line into the sales directors in their local markets, because they still physically sit in that market, because they need to plan that market specifically, and therefore need to be very closely connected to the sales director. The second thing that we have implemented there is that we went to national planning. So we moved away from bottom-up sales planning because we know that sales guys can do a lot, but they can't plan. And they also shouldn't plan because they are there for a different purpose. They need to sell, they need to talk to their customers, they need to provide us input, but we as supply chain professionals are far better equipped to plan. So we plan on a national level, which means that we don't look at these customers and those details, but we take the statistics that is done with forecasting analysts that look in a system which is called E2Open, the statistical model. They take that as a starting point and they enrich that forecast with building blocks. And that can be building blocks from SRM, marketing, sales, all kind of building blocks that you can imagine that are going to influence the future that cannot be predicted from the statistics. Once we have that total overview, then we translate that into value, and that is the number that the sales director signs off. That is his plan. So this is also the number that is taken into the finances. So we talk one number, which is all based on volume. The big benefit of that is that you don't have this difference anymore, where the sales director wants to keep some air into the volume plan because he thinks that's his way to secure the stocks, and at the same time lowers his forecast because he doesn't want to be held accountable for the value that comes from that. So all of that we've stripped out, which leads to a much leaner conversation in the IBP process and a much clearer view on the supply chain. In the systems that we've implemented, there is the possibility to plan scenarios, which means that if a sales guy comes to my team saying, I have a great opportunity, the planner can start a private scenario, work online in the real time with the supply planner to understand if we would do that, what would be the impact end to end. And if then everyone in the chain says, yes, this is a good idea, we all have thumbs up, then we upload it to the plan and it's real-time visible for the end-to-end organization. So as said, it really started from the processes and the people, and then almost the systems were a consequence of what we did. In terms of learnings, there are a lot of things that went well, and I think that's it's just a nice recognition. We went live with this system in June 2023, so pretty recently, and we didn't have any customer disruptions at all, although we went live with the full European market organization and 10 factories at the same time. The success has a lot to do with a sponsorship. So this was not a supply chain project. This project was sponsored by the CFO, by the business owner in the region, by P&O, by a general manager of the market representing all of the markets, and by a supply chain VP. And this coalition of people was for me the go-to every 4 weeks and helped me to solve problems across the business to get this implemented. Strong program team, progress over perfection, all those kind of buzzwords you can imagine are true here. Be bold is maybe the one big thing that made the difference for us. Don't be afraid to take decisions, and sometimes it's better to just take a decision than take no decision. In terms of what we would do differently, it's something around this end-to-end design thinking. We put some boundaries on the left, on the upstream and downstream. And if I had to do it again, I would broaden it a bit more. We kept S&OE, for example, out of scope because it created too much complexity on the organizational change side of things. And we also kept some of the roles and packs out of scope. If I had to do it again, I think I would include it there. Focus on capabilities is another big learning, because in the end, the full process system, organization and landscape is only as good as your people can manage. Stakeholder management, needless to say, I would say, and even more focus on the project team and the PMO. With the scarcity of resources, you just need to make sure that your organization can keep doing the work while a project team takes care of the new. Even though we are healthy unsatisfactory with some of the things we could have done differently, We've been rewarded by Connexus for the global best implementation for 2023, something for really to be proud of, and which could only happen through the team that we had working on this. To round us off, actually the implementation of something is only a starting point, and we're on the journey. We are going to improve. We've just signed off the plan for the first half of 2024 in terms of capability build, better understanding of the models. How do we get to further no-touch? How do we better segment so that we can get our people to work where they add value? So there's still a lot to do, but I think we've made a super nice step, and what I've been saying to my teams, and what I would love to repeat here and now as well, I think the team has left a legacy, and they are super proud of what they achieved, and it's really engaging for them to be able to work in this new environment. With that, I hand over. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's nice to hear, and congratulations for that work. And next, Annika Goudswaard of Adama, and probably also an amazing story, but take it away.
Thank you so much, Martijn. Speaking about pride, I'm super proud to be here on behalf of Adama. So this is one of the things I'll explain. You can imagine what does Adama do, in which context do we operate in this landscape. So I'll be speaking about this. Secondly, I'll be speaking about what we pitched linked to this conference is forward thinking. So how does Adama apply forward thinking, and which kind of tools do we use? I'll be speaking about product segmentation and how that affects our demand and our supply. I'll be speaking a bit about the cost impact and how we use forward cost trends to optimize our planning. And then I'll be speaking also a bit about tools. So what kind of tools does Adama use, and how does that help to make us collaborate better and constantly improve? And last but not least, concluding with my S&OP. So how does this all affect my S&OP maturity? So those are the things I'll be talking about, and later in the break would love to brainstorm with some of you. Already met people from HEMA, other companies. I love collaborating, especially if we're not in the same industry. A lot of things we can learn from each other. So don't hesitate to reach out to me during the conference or later on via LinkedIn. So first a bit about Adama, right? So you might know Adama is a Hebrew word for earth. So we are in the agriculture sector. Adama is part of the Syngenta group. Syngenta is supplying all kinds of tools for farmers, digital platforms, including economical advice, but also crop protection. So this is chemical and biological crop protection to make sure that we all have something to eat, right? This is a very important part of feeding the world. So this is what Adama does. We focus on pure generic products combined with what we call core leap. So we have new off-patent AIs that we combine also to cutting-edge new formulations. So we have this crop protection reach throughout different industries, but mainly in the arable crops. You can see here where we are operating. So I'm focusing mainly on the supply chain part, so on the manufacturing and R&D. You can see the big dot close to the center is Israel. So in these quite unprecedented times, it's a challenging place to be, but also being very proud to represent this amazing agile company, especially in these times, with sites in Europe, in Poland, 2 in Italy and 1 in Spain. These are the ones I'm directly responsible for. So I'm leading the S&OP in Adama, but also the site S&OPs in these entities. And we have representation globally, as you can see here. So the changing industry, right? I said Adama, but how does this affect us? We have regulatory constraints, we have product bans, we have all kinds of new technologies coming. We all know the famous robots that take away the weeds, that you don't need our products anymore. So how do we act upon that? But also the space we operate in is being squeezed. There's all kinds of mergers and acquisitions taking place. Adama, for example, we're now part of the Syngenta group, but there is in the news, you hear Bayer Crop Protection, for example, splitting up possibly. There was Corteva, a new entity formed. So there's all kinds of companies in our industry, many changes upcoming. talking about my other point, so looking forward, so how do we do that? Is making sure we don't treat our portfolio in the same way. You can't have the same strategy for all the products. So of course we segment our different areas globally, so push markets, distributor-driven markets, markets specifically targeted towards farmers, completely different way of operating, but also portfolio. So what we have in common in all these areas is that we have gold, silver, bronze segmentation. So we use Blue Yonder tools for managing this, and we separate our portfolio based upon gross profit and strategic importance. And this leads to different approaches in managing safety stock, upsides, customer service and sales unit routine calls, the way we hold the forecast accuracy accountable, the impact it has, and also the service level towards our customers, being very clear, have a handshake on those products linked to the gold, silver, bronze importance. And last but not least, also the last mile, right? Do we apply air freight, yes or no? So it's much easier if you have segmented your portfolio, you know, if it makes business sense. So the complexity we manage is 15,000 SKUs based upon 6,000 formulation country products. Above that is the layer 15,000 formulations. And the raw base is the 300 AIs, so active ingredients. So from sales moving into supply chain parameters, right? So we use specifically the turns for this. It's very convenient to take your bronze, silver, and gold, silver, and bronze parameters to decide if you want to make to order, have 30 days of stock, or you want to have 60 days of stock, for example. So on average, in our industry, it's quite common with the lead time, you know, from AI 7 months up to supply, which is approximately 3 months. So we take a turn of 4 into account to understand if we have on that specific product a good or bad turn. So what do we do on the cost aspect? So we started, of course, as you can imagine, the base starting point is looking at sales unit inventories. So this is the first starting point. It's like a short horizon up to 3 months. But the next aspect is, so what does the cost change mean? So we have also our site inventories. So next level thinking we're implying now is also holding the countries accountable for the stock at the sites. It's very important that they hold those accountabilities, because if they cancel an order, we're still sitting on those inventories in our sites. Following level is the short-term purchase order. So we have procurement costs in place. And last but not least, procurement long-term costs. So we look up to 12, 18 months ahead even, to decide what to procure when, and hold those gold, silver, bronze strategies accountable to make sure that we have the best procurement plans and go, no-go moments for each of those products. So this long-term visibility also helps me drive in my S&OP process the best decisions. I bring products above or below a certain gross margin, and together we decide we go or we have a hold strategy. So we use Blue Yonder, as I said. We have to be agile, and this is where we need to experiment. It is also my call out to the companies here in the room providing their services. Make sure that your tools are accessible to Power BI. Let companies play, right, in order to grow, because if you restrict the companies too much within your own software, you don't show how the connection is with other softwares, it's very difficult to grow. So what we do with our Power BI layer on top of Blue Yonder, we are allowed to simulate rolling forecast, actuals, and purchase planning, and the differences between different, I will show you in a moment, if we have different rolling forecasts, how do they compare and how do they affect the business outcome. In my supply eye, something we implemented, was it Martijn, two years ago already, outlet. So I defined something which I call outlet shopping almost, is combining all of the slow movers and no movers in certain sales units and mapping it against the demand or the purchase demand as such from other sales units. So this way I can easily move stocks between entities with almost no touch. Of course, a segmented service is important. So if you apply gold, silver, bronze, how do you sell accordingly? Right? A bronze product, if it's sold out, it's fine. If it's a gold product, you treat it differently. So the segmented service tracking, as well as from the site to the sales units, as well as from the sales units to our customers, this is vital. So we're on this path. And last but not least, for me, supply planning is much easier, and demand planning is too as well, by having an S&OP dashboard. So my supply eye is, as such, is a place with one click. If I have a monthly business review with one of my sales units, I just go to my supply eye, immediately see all of the KPIs, if they're under or overperform, and where we need to take actions. This is just giving you a glimpse, and happily, go in discussion with people with their own Power BI tools to see how we can learn from each other. But this part is the sales overview, where I can quickly compare different versions of the forecast to see how this affects sales. And we make the correlation with our FAR dashboard, which is our forecast accuracy, comparing area forecast, customer forecast with the final customer forecast, the company forecast, to see how we acted and take the best decisions. So one of the next steps we're doing is being able to actually key in the so what, right? So today it's a lot of information and action suggestions, but how do you then drive and what action did you actually take in your S&OP? That's my next step, to record it even in Power BI. The technology is there, so we're taking that next step. And very keen to, we spoke about language models just now. Microsoft is coming very soon, also with Power BI with the extra language model. So this will bring some nice future benefits. And then last but not least, S&OP, right? So we have a regional management for managing risks and opportunities. I do, like Edith explained, we have also local resources, so demand planning is there. Still very much on local sales unit level. I would love to bring that to make sure that's part of the regional team and that we sign off with local sales unit. And then we have holistic KPIs, right? So clear KPIs, joint KPIs, non-conflicting KPIs is very important. And then last but not least, keep developing, right? So boots on the ground and make sure that we reach a higher S&OP maturity level. This is my final aim. So that's it. We're built for change, as it says, and looking forward to future disruptions to constantly improve. So, okay.
Thank you. So thank you very much. And last but not least, Ariane Longpré from Henkel Home Products.
Thank you.
Take it away.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ariane Longpré. I lead the Global Planning Excellence team for Henkel Consumer Brands. Martin, thanks for having me once again joining the event. I did in 2021. And it's good that I returned 2 years later, because if we look at the Henkel landscape, as much as internal as well as external, it's changed a lot. So it's my pleasure really to bring up to speed as to what we do. So for those of you who do not know Henkel as a company, just a few facts and figures before I explain a bit more on where we are in that transformation process. So 22 billion euro business, acting globally, headquartered in Düsseldorf. Myself, I'm Canadian, but I'm at home in the Netherlands, which is where we have our global supply chain organization. We have 146 years in operation, still going strong. And you can see other facts and figures that make up for who we are as a company and what we drive also in our industries. Industries, I speak in plural because the Henkel Group now has 2 different BUs. Historically, it was 3, so I'll come back to this in a moment. So we have our adhesive technologies business, really the global lead in providing adhesive sealants coating solutions to industrial customers, but also consumers. And the part of the organization that I'm here to speak about today is the Consumer Brands unit, which is newly formed. So it was announced beginning of 2022. And this year, 2023, is the first year that we operate in the new structure, be it org or P&L. And you probably know our brands better than the company, the group itself. And essentially, Consumer Brands acts in the field of laundry and home care business, as well as beauty care for retail and professional customers. Okay, so I hope that places the company a bit better for you. And like I said, a big part of what has been happening in the past 1 year or so was this integration. And when I was here at the event in 2021, I was talking that we were engaged in an IBP journey, really transitioning from S&OP to IBP. So Bram, back to what you were referring to from stage 3 to stage 4. Obviously, going into a merge now, it was simply not the time to be able to pursue this. When you change your whole P&L structure, well, I think you need to also tune in to what the business priorities are. So we paused on that, but we continued the transformation coming from a different angle. And this is also what I will elaborate on. So double-clicking on the Henkel consumer brands supply chain, that's my only slide. Of course, it doesn't do justice to what we do day in and day out, but maybe it gives a glimpse of the complexity that we manage. So many sites, warehouses. A big theme also of the newly formed business is how do we manage more actively our portfolio, what adds value. And I think at the time of driving a transformation, we often think of transformation in an additive way. So we add stuff. And a lot of what we think about these days is how do we simplify? How do we stop? How do we also unlearn certain aspects to make room to be able to embrace new ways of working? So that's a big part for us. And also the whole BU, as you can imagine, in supply chain organization, is at the stage now of making a big shift from historically a lot of focus on volume, on service, which is all good stuff. But of course, with the market disruptions, with also a lot of pressure on materials, then we are shifting now more to a value-driven supply chain organization. So really tuning in the whole P&L look at that. What is planning today? And I choose now to show, it's a picture that I show internally. I don't think I need to explain this to supply chainers, probably. But it's effective and probably to some of you provocative in the way I depict this, because it's very linear. And I think this is part of also the mindset that we try to, the mindset shift that we try to operate internally. Because supply chain, of course, there's a lot of connecting the dots. I think you were talking about this, Edith. I'm also passionate about this. But connecting the dots doesn't mean that you need to do this in a sequence, right? There's a lot of concurrent activity that need to take place. And that's a lot of what we talk about, but it's not quite the way we act today. And I always use this slide to outline what are the challenges that we face today, really to spark the desire for change. So if we talk, I think, Bram, you were also mentioning it before, so the functional plans is still a lot of what we experience today. Demand plan, I mean, we've done a lot of benchmarking at the time of setting up the new structure. So we know exactly where we stand according to customer requirements, industry standards, and there's a gap to that, and that's something that we're after at closing also with the planning transformation. Supply and material plan, we have a very, 20 years operating on APO, DP and S&P, so highly customized, as you can imagine, but unconstrained at the core of it as a system, which of course is unfit for purpose these days. And to top this end-to-end planning, we do that, of course, as a matter of survival, like many of you, unfortunately, still often, more often than not in Excel. And that's something that we also want to do more holistically, connecting the supply chain organization to more the enterprise level. So what we have, and for us the answer to these challenges that I just outlined before is next generation planning. That's the program. If I mention NGP, pardon me, because that's what I talk about every day internally. So, and the reason why we pursue this, I mean, there's a positive momentum at the time of creating the new unit, and it's really at the core of it why we drive this is to regain and it's to sustain the competitiveness. And I think the trap of every transformation is always that you set the goalpost, you say, I have my North Star in 2026, that's where I want to go. And of course we did that, but then the question and the challenge that we always do, at least as a project team, is to think, how do we always inject also further innovation along the way, because that goalpost is not fixed. So that is also important. The reason why we see the need to transform in the analogy of the house, you will see we build on that also internally. So part of transforming, if we don't want to do this in an additive way, is to leave things behind, to stop doing certain things. And for us, of course, we made, I will come back to this, a choice of, we work with a new technology, with a new platform. And what I don't want is to rebuild APO, 20 years of APO customization, and simply in a more performing platform, right? Because this is also missing the point. So we really use and make the point to say we build something new. And that's why the analogy of the house helps us a little bit telling that story. And we do this because of market disruptions. We do this because it's needed anyway as a result of the merge, because the two legacy units were working very differently. So it's highly heterogeneous in the way we used to operate. And then also, well, we have outdated system that we feel the need to replace. If we look into the key differentiator of the program, so how do we position this? For us at the moment, right or wrong, is simply, again, the context and to tune into the business environment. We have layers of change. We're in the context of an internal merge. So there's a P&L change, there's a supply chain transformation program also being operated in terms of driving further operational excellence. and there's a planning transformation, right? So you need to have a red thread, and that slide is really on how do we position the value of driving also that planning transformation in the greater scheme of Henkel consumer brands. So we want to create near-time end-to-end visibility. So we really after this, so because we have a good integrated supply chain today, we need to sustain this, but we also want to improve in terms of velocity, in terms of really connecting planning execution. Shift from a volume-based S&OP to a value-based S&OP, we do that today. Again, a lot on Power BI, Excel, so the good news is that we have agreed on how to do this in a manual way. Now it's how do you industrialize this, but also to really enable a future IBP process, and simply to make better and faster decision. Right? So that's the reason, that's a bit more the holistic value proposition of the program within the BU. If we look into what is in scope, so back to the analogy of the house, we build this step by step, layer by layer, if you will. And at the moment, so what you see here is we always say it's technology, it's process, it's capabilities. We need to take care of this holistically for the planning organization. We redefine the role of the planner, or planners, I have to say. And that we do it very iteratively and integrated, right? So it was important for us that when we started, we don't want to do a year of blueprinting without directly codifying this in the system. So we really did that hand in hand, really to take the learnings as fast as we can. At the moment, we are engaged in the phase 0 and 1, which is really and yes, we do blueprinting, so that we see a little bit, we make a plan as to how the house should look like. Think of this more as a framework. So we don't do this on a very granular level, but really we make key decisions that would be difficult to reverse afterwards, so that we can at least put a bit more of a frame or a guardrail on that. And then we start building this directly. So we do this for supply and scheduling, which many of you knowing about planning it's hardcore, because then you come really at a level of already granularity that is quite low or high, so a lot of data basically. And you need to also connect this near real-time integration is also extremely important. So at the moment, we work a lot on the technology front to replace APO, but also to augment it. So that's always, so we don't want to just do a straightforward replacement. That's always a reminder to our teams. We think of the process design. So again, because that's our opportunity to bring the two legacy organizations together, and there's a need to do this differently. And S&OP is really at the core of it also. And the new capability build is really the aspect of people, activity placement. So we really think of what do we do in a business or BU organization, what do we leverage our GBS Plus organization, for instance, what do we do locally, regionally, globally. So a lot of questioning. We're getting there in terms of shaping this. We are there as to how we want to set this up. And I would say what lies ahead of us is really to really build this at scale in a system. So you see a little bit the picture of the different stages also, because we try to chunk down the capabilities between foundation, advanced, and innovation, because otherwise it's simply too much to digest at once for our planning community. So if we look at how planning will look like in the future, a little bit of a from and to. I mean, you can see the house now with the sun shining. Of course, that's very aspirational. But I mean, at the end of the day, we aim at building something better, more performing on different levels. And I'm not going to go through step by step, point by point. I think you can probably read faster than I can talk. But essentially what we want, and that's important also to mention this, for us is really on how do we use data, how do we don't shy away from using automation, because we simply believe that at the moment there's too many decisions to be made, so that a simple or just a human brain can process this at the speed that we need, right? So really a big positioning is how do we supplement, how do we equip, and how do we reposition also the role of a planner so that they can position themselves as business partners, as challengers, to make sure also that we make the right holistic P&L decisions. So that comes with a bit more specialization for sure. The topic of integrated cross-functional collaboration is also at the core of this. I think, Edith, like you were mentioning for us, if I look at the executive team that is coming together to see on the progress, to remove roadblocks for us, is our CSCO, is our CFO as well, to make sure that we have the right degree of support and that connection between supply chain planning and financial planning is something really that step by step we build. Yeah, and ultimately also differentiate supply chain planning response is back at the core of really how do we keep the service mindset, but also make this in a more efficient, performing way, is really also at the core of that transformation. So I hope that gives you a glimpse for what we're up to now, and happy to take this up further in the panel discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you. Ariane, thank you. It's nice to see you are doing storytelling using a house and building it up and creating rooms, that kind of stuff. That's good to see, because storytelling is worthwhile and needed, because otherwise you get no acceptance. So for now, I would like to hand over to Bram. Get this conversation going. If not, I have questions, but Bram, it's up to you.
I'm sure that if I don't have questions, you will have questions, but I think nobody doubts in this room. Okay, first of all, I need to say that I'm very humbled to be here with three lady supply chain professionals, and also the power stories you've been talking about. When we think about S&OP, I think there's hundreds of angles we can take. We could, I think during the break, I heard engaged discussions on what do we do where, centralized, country level, so how do we organize. For sure we could talk about technology and how technology is enabling changes. We could also talk about indeed that sustainability aspect and how do we include that in our decision making. But we took the perspective of finance, yeah, and integrating financial planning and supply chain planning. Just as a starting question, maybe I would ask you, within your respective companies, where are you today when it comes to integrating the financial planning and the supply chain planning? By how far is it integrated, yes or no? Where are the touch points? So Edith, maybe I would just start.
Yeah, thanks, Bram. So I think I already explained it. We have a pretty connected team, and therefore also number. To the people that are reporting into me and that sit in the market, their almost partner in crime is the CFO of that market, because they run more or less the same agenda. They are looking after an objective number and the best number. Which is sometimes a bit different to sales, which is more opportunistic, more what are the chances that we still can see, what are the opportunities that we see, which is a nice dynamic between those two actually, because I think with that, if you have the right conversations between those two, you get into a very strong plan and into how do you build something that holds true, but at the same time is stretching. And I think that's the power of connecting supply chain and finance into the conversations of the business. Yeah,
and as far as I understood when you explained, so the demand planners are reporting to you, they are building up the plan really from the details, and in the end, it's the sales director who is signing off the financial number which comes out of a result.
Yes.
And that financial number is also the financial number going into the financial planning process.
Yes. Yeah. The only difference between the volume number to value and the end number is any financial adjustments that you need to do for whatever reason. Okay. And that's the only difference between the two.
And can you give an example of what would be an adjustment that is then done on the financial number?
Could be we are performing way above target, so the bonuses for the teams will get much bigger than we thought it was, so that needs to be factored into the P&L, cannot be translated back to volume, just as an example.
Yeah. Okay, good. Ariane?
We have a different point of departure. I'd love to get where you are. We already made some steps in terms of that integration. I think for us, one of the challenges in coming to one figure is also the way we go about financial planning. In terms of finance, often think of a plan as a year. And in supply chain, it's very much rolling, because you need to make constant decision in that telescopic view in the very short-term, tactical, and then more strategic horizon. So for us, it's more of at certain point in time within the financial year, we make a deliberate exercise of talking to each other, on agreeing on that's the figure, that's the assumption that goes into this, and that's what we take as a basis, for instance, to do your product costing or your plant costing also, right? And so we agreed on how do we financialize the plan, so that at least we have this calibrated. And we agreed also on the level where we want to reconcile this. So we have a bit of an IBP common hierarchy to say, okay, supply chain may need to go deeper, finance to roll this further up, but there's a common denominator across category, brands, and markets. And that helps also the dialogue to have that common language with the finance organization.
So at least if it's not automatically integrated, let's agree on at what level of detail can we connect the plans. And that's at least at that level, then try to talk the same language.
Yeah.
Okay, Annika, you want to?
Yeah, perhaps nice to add is that for sure we have one number, at least in the majority of the regions, especially in my region. But the handshake I have with finance is how we split the financial adjustment. So as I explained in our preparation discussion, that we have a special commercial FA, financial adjustment, signed off by the CFO. And then I manage actually anything linked to supply FAs. So I use a simple tool like Smartsheet that all of my sales units can report all of their projected supply risks. And especially in S&OP, I try to prevent them. Anything is longer ahead. But by making sure that we have these two means to steer our final financial outcome, the value, we make sure we have a handshake. So any regulatory pressure, price pressure, bonus related, that comes into the commercial FA that CFO signs off. And I'm really looking for how can I optimize supply, what kind of risks are there, how can I prevent them from happening, so we make sure we reach our financial target. Yeah.
And so if I try to translate for myself and hopefully then for the rest of the group as well, so you start really from that S&OP plan and then we make adjustments. So in that sense, I think it's not just the same plan, we need to make adjustments to account for risks, to account for bonuses. But okay, that's a discussion we have. Yeah. So whatever the resulting financial plan is, we know how the two plans are connected together.
It's a volume plan in the end. You know, the value is the part where you put the FA for mitigating the financial target. So I think we're quite aligned on that. Yeah, it's a challenge, right, to get to the right number. But as long as we agree that the volume, we don't play with volume to get, create any buffers or have any sandbagging in place. That's what you should prevent.
Okay. Yeah, which if I look at the companies I come in, it's not the standard. I think many companies don't have that currently in place. But the fact that you're there must be a reason why you want to go there. Second question from my side would be like, okay, my feeling is that you might be a bit above average from a maturity perspective, but do you see opportunities? Do you say, okay, we have this or that fixed or that's okay, but do you see opportunities either from a supply chain perspective where you say, okay, if I would have better information on this or that, it would help me to make better decisions, or I think that finance could, there's an opportunity for finance to better leverage what we are doing at the supply chain side. Do you see any opportunities? And I'll just let the one who has the urge go first.
There are always some opportunities.
That's good.
If there were no opportunities, I would not work in this area anymore. Yeah. So one of the things I have on my calendar for 2024 is strategic planning. So today, my team plans a 6-quarter rolling forecast. And we want to go to a proper 3-year outlook. So we have, let's call it a strategic planning which looks 3 years ahead, always. But in my planning cycle, I mainly look at the S&OP Plus Horizon, which is 18 months. I want to go to this 3 years because that will enable us to properly do the capacity planning in our factories as needed. And then we can also, if we do that well, we can really connect the most realistic business plan towards the ambition which is set in the business. And then we can already at an early stage see where do we see the gaps and start to bridge those.
So by looking further ahead, we will detect the gaps further ahead. We can start addressing them earlier instead of improvising ourselves.
Yes.
when they get in a more tactical
Yes.
horizon. So that's one of the
Specifically knowing that we have quite a complex product to produce. So that means if we need to build new capacity, it takes quite some time.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, okay.
Any others?
No, the first is the same. We have company level forecasting, or from my case, my 20 sales units. I'm touching now the area level, but the key customer, our account plans, not having account plans for 12, 18 months, which is, especially in the Netherlands, is common, but account plans for 3 years. This is really have strategic alliances with our customers and decide where our portfolio needs to go. You know, crop protection is changing tremendously. 30% of our portfolio will be banned in a couple of years. So we need to agree together with our key customers, where do we want to go? How we can support the farmer in the best way? And if you only have 18 months horizon, that won't help you with your capacity planning and your network planning, right? So you need to have a better foundation for this, yeah.
And one area that we're working on that I think is mutually beneficial for supply chain, for finance, but also for the commercial organization is the topic of pricing and elasticity. So really understand how does that, because this impacts really the mix. And now part of what we are investigating is how can we get more direct information, especially for demand planning, to understand, okay, I have a pricing action for that category on that market. What's the elasticity? What's the impact? Because what everyone wants to answer is how are we going to develop in terms of growth from a value and from a volume perspective, right? Because this is where you need to keep things in sync. Also in terms of what the decisions that you need to make at the factories. So that we have the data. The question is, to whom do you make this available? And to inform what type of decisions. So we work a lot on that now to be able to build a more immediate response and understanding of those price actions.
Which I read a bit as a common interest and also a common challenge, like what is the impact of price on the volumes? And certainly if we look further ahead, how instead of each function or department making its assumptions, how do we jointly clarify the assumptions and how do we jointly clarify the plan? So that's how I read it. Next question, follow on, otherwise Martijn starts asking questions you don't want that for sure. Yeah, so what is holding us back? And maybe we started it from a supply chain finance perspective, but also like commercial is coming into play. So it seems like we have a lot more to win in jointly solving these questions. At the same time, to me, it seems to require extra energy to do so. It doesn't happen automatically. So what do you see as hurdles? What is holding us back to do it more in a natural way, which is maybe more jointly solving?
I think what we both would love, so we discussed, is the year-end target. You know, that's a terrible disruptor. You know, making sure you hit your year-end, while especially in my case, the season is like a pre-supply, and then you flows the natural, you know, the normal seasonality is January till June-ish. So by having this force on December, it's completely disrupting the whole supply chain as such. It would be such an amazing thing if we could let go of that. Yeah. We have to find a way to balance that more properly.
Yeah. What's holding us back is also to try to understand better the decisions to be made. And I've been in supply chain. I've been also more part of a strategic planning finance organization. And being part of the two organizations just made me realize how very little understanding there is. Because you see things through a different lens often, right? I mean, you have finance that comes top-down, let's say that's the assumption. And that part of the organization lives better with ambiguity, for instance, right? Because they have less granularity of data. Then you have a supply chain organization that comes often to explain the reality, our reality, and comes with very detailed answer, bottom up, right? And somewhere back to your white spot in the org chart, that's what we need to bring in common, right? Because you cannot always be top-down and just say, oh, yeah, well, I send this to execution, I see what happens in return, right? I mean, this feedback mechanism needs to go very fast, and that adjustment loop can only work if, in the end, we work at that intersection and find that collaborative way. But I think that level of understanding of what happens and the decisions that need to be made, I think is lacking still.
Okay. Edith?
Yeah, maybe a bit of another lens, almost to complement the stories of my colleagues. I think every transformation will only work if you have this triangle of project management, sponsorship, and change management in order. I think the change management component is sometimes something we overlook, specifically us being more fact-based and data-driven and logical. Not always the rest of the organization is. And you need to be aware of the importance of the change management. Almost 30% of your success will be determined by, are you able to take the people with you? And it takes a lot of focus and efforts to do that. And I think what I've learned now also for my plan for 2024, regardless of the professionals that I need someone dedicated on the change management to make sure that we regularly communicate, that we get the right people together, that we do the stakeholder management, that we do all that, what sometimes is perceived as what a lot of work to I don't know what, but it's just critical for your success.
Yeah, and it's probably about creating a common understanding on where the opportunities are, a bit like we say, okay, if we're in the operations, does finance understand what the impact of the end of quarter or end of year effects are on the operations? Yeah? And if these are the effects, is this truly driving value? So I can imagine that we all have our own worldview. That's a bit. And we don't necessarily understand each other's world, and addressing that and communicating that and clarifying where the opportunities are, and when we are doing a transformation, why we are doing that. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I think in the words you use, you address or you engage a specific profile. Some people don't want to hear the facts. They don't want to understand the rationale. They either want to be just part of the party, they want to be enthusiastic, they just have different brains. And I think that kind of range of people you need to address in your change management agenda.
Okay. No. For sure, I would expect that salespeople have a different DNA than finance people or supply chain people. So how do we adjust communication and how do we engage people? That's then what you refer to. Trying to close it up before Martijn takes over with questions. But coming back to my statement that I believe that supply chain planning and financial planning should be integrated into one plan. To make it into a Martijn type of challenge, can you say I agree or disagree and try to explain very briefly, like in 30 seconds, why you would agree or disagree? So just once more, my feeling is we need to fully integrate supply chain planning and financial planning. I agree, I disagree, and why? 30 seconds.
I agree. I think the business world will be a better place if only that would be the case. And why? I think it goes back to speed, efficiency, right? I mean, the world is so uncertain. I think it's almost, how can I say, it's a lack of humility to think that you can forge yourself an opinion as to how it looks like on your own. Right? I think this is where the power of collaboration, of cross-functional collaboration comes into play. There's so much uncertainty, then it's almost like you need all the little antennas left and right to say, okay, how do we forge ourselves a common opinion of the future? So that to me would be, I think it would be a much better place, yes.
Edith, Annika.
No, without doubt, already on this journey, where for me the S&OP part, mainly finance, is the driver of the discussions. With our dashboard, we complement with our supply details, and then when it gets to mid-long planning, a supply chain takes the lead, but with one number digit. So this is very clear. And this financial adjustment that we both steer to come to the final value number, we both agree. Volume is driven purely on one number, this is clear. So I think this is where we see the future, where I want to make some next steps, is this cost model, right? To start to explain a bit my IBP, with all humility, indeed, our steps that we're taking. So we have a forward COGS module, but to get the data right? To really understand of your tier 2, 3, what are the risks, and are the numbers correct? Can you really build on that when you look further than 2-3 quarters ahead? And I would love that to have that element even better ingrained in our forecast. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, only 5 words. Let's call it enterprise planning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. The name was still in the in discussion, so that's okay.
Thanks. You know, I have a final question. You know, building up on what you just have said. You know, you probably all are in the phase of creating your final budget for next year, financial budget. So I was wondering, you know, if and how will IBP or enterprise planning help or improve to get a better financial budget for next year? Because now, you know, the world is very volatile. You can hardly expect what will happen. So does IBP or enterprise planning, or how do you call it anyway, does it help to get a better financial budget, more realistic budget for next year? Or is something like top-down, this is what our shareholders want and this is what we have to provide?
Well, perhaps it ends with that anyway, that you make your beautiful plans and then you get top down the final direction. But I do think it really drives better discussions. And so we separated also our work plan with our 5-year plan process. And we definitely use IBP aspects, like for example, our gross margin driver, to have a discussion on our, what we call VOP, so our value optimized portfolio. Without having that financial aspect in there, we would never have that discussion.
Ariane, does it help to have this kind of planning to have a better or more realistic financial budget for next year?
Yeah, I mean, what I would like is that we don't stop the clock where the calendar turns the page, right? So I think this mindset of continuous planning, it has to flow. And then you integrate insights as and when they come. And then as you come closer to realization, you just recheck, okay, is this still the right assumption? Is this still in the way we want to go? I still believe that this financial planning, there's a necessity to it, but to make this a whole one-off exercise, you know, top-down, once per year is where part of the pain lies, right? So to have this more as a continuous process, a more holistic one where different parts of the organization factor in what they know would be helpful, of course. And that to me goes in the direction also of integrated planning. So everyone contributes with their assumption.
Edith, is it helping that, for setting the budget?
I think it's just a starting point to the point. My team, yesterday we had the demand management review of this period, and they have submitted H1 2025. That's the conversation that we are having now. And the financial budget of 2024 is the consequence of the conversations that have happened over the last couple of cycles, leading into financials.
Okay. Sounds healthy. Thanks for giving this insight. I think a big applause because there's real knowledge here. Before I want to wrap up, first I want to have you at a table, a further 15 minutes conversation, 20 minutes at a table, to have the discussion. They have stated a lot of things, what they are doing to make the connection between finance and supply chain. So, have a 15 minutes conversation, and then I will wrap up to see, okay, what I'm thinking of how we to move forward. So how should your company make the step with finance from S&OP to integrated business planning? Or what kind of conversation should you have at finance to have a better understanding both directions, from supply chain and financial side? So what kind of conversation should you be having? You have already heard a lot, and maybe this can help. If you have a conversation with your CFO tomorrow, what would you say to the CFO, what you learned today, what could help for supply chain planning? Go ahead.